So, welcome back to the third and final bit of this three-part series of the Battle of Thermopylae. As we stated in the last one, this is pretty much rinse and repeat for the Greeks. They were killing the Persians by the thousands while taking minimal losses. However, again, we had that Greek traitor. Xerxes, on the second night, Xerxes sent what was left of his immortals with the help of a few other groups of warriors, totaling up to 20,000 warriors to find this hidden mountain path and to flank the Greek forces. Now, Leonidas, the king of the Spartans who was at this battle, who had more or less taken charge, was aware of this path and had actually set one of the Greek groups to guard this path. Now, either due to some confusion over who each group was, this group did not do their job. One historian says that group of Greeks was slaughtered, while another group says that there were no major casualties because there was major confusion. But basically, the 20,000 Persians, when they saw this group guarding the path, they were actually afraid that they were the Spartans, and essentially hightailed it down the rest of the path and refused to really get into combat because they knew if they were the Spartans, their plan was doomed to fail. Sadly, they weren't. The next morning, Leonidas learned of this group that had gotten past due to runners from the other Greeks and an actual Persian traitor who had warned him of this, and he called a war council between him and the other Greek leaders. At this war council, Leonidas announced to the rest of the leaders of his intention for the Spartans to stay and to hold the line as long as possible. He told the other groups if they didn't want to die, they should leave. Now, it's not quite sure why, but about 2,000 Greeks in total stayed with Leonidas, including his Spartans. Some of them out of duty or loyalty, some of them just out of craziness. There was one group called the Thespians. They were noted for fighting to the bitter end, which is kind of interesting because this was literally the city of Thespia's entire fighting force. So again, kind of a questionable tactical decision, but hey, who are we to judge? So, with his 2,000 soldiers staying with him, the rest of the Greek army retreated. Now, the big reason why this happened, nobody really knows why Leonidas stays. But there's a couple of different theories. I'm going to go with the tactical one, and that would have been if Leonidas would have known that if everyone had run, it's quite likely that the Persians would have ran them down on their cavalry and slaughtered them all. And then the Persians would have had free reign and they would have just run through Greece. Now, Leonidas knew that the best chances for Greece to mount up what was left of a defense, that he needed to buy time for what was left of that army to get away, to join up with the other Greeks, and to help evacuate the nearby cities. So Leonidas, with his 2,000 warriors, instead of going on the defensive, they went on the offensive. And they charged into the field that the Persians were camping in. At this point, the 20,000 Persians who had been flanking them were finally fully behind. Thankfully, that major Greek force that fled did get away. So there was the 20,000 Persians behind Leonidas, and then Xerxes sent another 10,000 to attack him from the front. The Greeks killed everyone that they could. It is a quote that I found, I know, Wikipedia, but they fought until their spears broke, and then they fought with their swords. And when they could no longer fight with their swords, they fought tooth and nail. Eventually, Leonidas was killed by a volley of arrows, which led to the two armies fighting over his body. Eventually, the Greeks were able to recover it, and they retreated to a nearby hill on the battlefield. It is at this point that the Persians just slaughtered them with arrows. It rained metal that day. But even in the face of that defeat, where Leonidas and the rest of his soldiers had died, it gave Greece the time it needed to take out the Persians later on. And not really take out in a battle, but to win, essentially. The two nearby cities were mostly evacuated by the end of this battle, and so there were minimal casualties from those two cities, despite being destroyed. Where Athens was completely evacuated and was able to rebuild afterwards as well. Later on, with the Greek forces being able to retreat, they were able to gather with the newer Greek armies that had been formed, and they found another choke point further down the line past Athens, where they would have had a complete advantage, where they found a small valley and fortified it. Xerxes, seeing this, actually decided, I'm not going to get caught in that, because my navy's been destroyed, because that was a whole other thing going on, and I don't want to get caught in Europe. So Xerxes actually fled, leaving a portion of his forces to stay and to carry out the fight for the next year or so. To make a long story short, later on down the line, the Greek force was able to get this Persian force into open battle and eradicated it. So what would have happened if none of this had happened? Had no one defended Thermopylae, Persia could have run over Greece, and the world as we know it today would not have been that world. Or what if the Greek forces had fully fled? Again, very similar. Those armies could have been completely wiped out. The nearby cities may not have had enough time to evacuate. Even Athens may have been injured by it. So, but yeah, that is our story. I want to thank you all for joining me on this short story. I know this last episode is a little bit longer, but I think I can get away with that. Thank you, and we'll see what happens in the future if I make any more podcasts. But until then, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.